Jeff Paterson is the host of RinkWide Vancouver, as well as our Canucks reporter. He joins us now. Jeff, big takeaway from a big victory last night over the Kings.
Yeah, I think that was the game that we've been waiting for from the Vancouver Canucks. It took them 12 games to get there, but a good opponent, tail end of a road trip, star power, star players rose above. I mean, Quinn Hughes is just at such an extraordinary level and has kept it there. But, you know, look at the goal scorers for the Vancouver Canucks. It's Garland, it's Hughes, it's Jake DeBrusk, and it's JT Miller into an empty net. Those are the guys that you would expect to be all over the score sheet on a lot of nights for the Vancouver Canucks. It hasn't all come together. I like the offense. And defensively, as good as Hughes and Hronek were, I thought best performance of the season. And again, it took longer than expected, but Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers as a secondary pairing held up their end of the bargain. And then even a little lower, Vinny Desharnais turns the puck over on what leads to the Byfield goal to open the scoring. Canucks have given up the first goal in 6 straight. Big deal. They just roar back, and they're starting to play the way I think that they thought, and that a lot of us thought that they could and would play on a lot of nights this season.
A skilled play goal for Jake DeBrusk to get his 3rd in a row. And we were told he's a streaky goal scorer, boys. Is he looking like one right now, isn't he?
Yeah, are we calling him the Golden Boy? Because all 3 of his goals have come in the Golden State. Now, he's got to find somewhere other than California to be productive, and there are a lot of locales around the National Hockey League. So let's hope that he's warming up here and that whatever pressure he was feeling, having gone 9 without scoring, I think for me, like the goal, the patience, the poise, and ultimately the finish, terrific. I like 5 shots on goal from Jake DeBrusk. This is a guy, if you're going to score, you've got to get pucks on the net and to the net, and he hadn't been doing an awful lot of that. So we've seen him score in different ways. The big shot in San Jose, net front, and the deflection in Anaheim, and there last night, the hands that looked like a guy that could be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. And it is funny how 3 in a row can really change the narrative around a guy. He's got 3 goals in 12 games, which puts him on a 20-goal pace, which I think is at the low end of the acceptable range over the course of a season. But it's feeling a whole lot better, and I'm sure it does for him, rather than 0 for 9, wondering when that first one was going to come. All of a sudden, you're right, we're seeing the streak go the other direction, and we'll see if he can carry that on when the team gets home here and starts playing all these games at Rogers Arena.
Yeah, 5 of just 23 shots for the Canucks, so a high percentage of them. And in fact, you put him and Sherwood together, it's more than the third of the total shots they have.
And that's continuing to trend, Jeff. What do you think of this, choosiness of Canucks shooting? Do you think this is actually by design? And there's a case to be made that in sports that there's, and I've heard this from Vandy Sartini in soccer too, take good shots, don't take bad shots. And they aren't the Carolina Hurricanes who shoot from everywhere. Do you think this will continue all season long, that the shot totals might not be too gaudy, but they'll still score their requisite amount of goals?
I think they found out the hard way that you can't really have a ton of success in the playoffs. What did they have, 15 and 17 shots in the final 2 games against the Edmonton Oilers, and people were screaming from the mountaintops, shoot the puck. Quinn is shooting it at an outrageous rate. Nobody else on the team is anywhere close to that. So I do wonder if he's taking some of the shots away from others, and obviously it's going to be an ongoing story with Elias Pettersson to see him and his shot rates, and can he get those moving in the right direction. But there are factors, right? Like the LA Kings came into the night the 3rd stingiest team in the NHL in terms of the shots given up. I think only Colorado and Carolina allowed fewer on a nightly basis. So the Canucks are seeing a stingy team that doesn't give up an awful lot. So I think in some ways the game kind of played out the way that I anticipated and expected on that front. But I hear what you're saying, quality over quantity, but I don't think it's crazy talk to think that you can have both on some nights as well.
Well, and the other thing we should mention about when we talk shots from yesterday's game, 21 attempts missed, 20 blocks. So it was 64 shot attempts, which is a pretty good total for any given game. And yes, certainly better than some of the totals that we saw last year in the playoff series against Edmonton.
I think the power play, guys, is an area too. I know it scored in the first period, the Garland goal, but it took them a while to get going there, and still didn't generate an awful lot. That's an area that I want to see shot volume up, and ultimately, one of these nights I want to see the power play win them a hockey game. They haven't needed it because they've been spreading the offense around. Did score a power play goal in Anaheim. They scored one. So they've scored in back-to-back games. These are baby steps for the power play. But I do think that's one area that they can bump the shot totals up, and hopefully that's an area that can lead to a little more offense along the way as well.
Was that their best defensive game of the year?
Yeah, I think so. Again, you only play the team that's on the schedule in front of you, so they don't have to apologize for beating the Blackhawks and the Flyers and the Sharks and the Ducks. Last night it was the Kings. And this is honestly, Kopitar, 15 points coming into the night. He was quiet. And I think a lot of that was the work that the Canucks did. And for all the angst in the market, Elias Pettersson had a really solid defensive game. Now he's being paid to produce at both ends, and so it's sort of a one-handed clap for Elias Pettersson that, the defensive game, that's great. But you want to see something at the other end of the ice still, waiting for the breakout game, just one shot on goal for Petey. But the Kings have some weapons. They aren't as constrictive. They aren't all about that 1-3-1 that choked the life out of the Canucks last year. They took 3 of 4. And in fact, the one game the Canucks beat them was in overtime. So LA got a point in all 4 of the games last year head-to-head, had won 5 of 6 against the Canucks going back a couple of seasons. So on a lot of levels, I just think I liked what the Canucks did, overcame a sluggish start, or at least giving up the early goal. And then once they got the lead, they didn't try to sit back. They pushed, they extended it. I mean, my goodness, I'm just going to sit here and put my feet up and watch Quinn Hughes walk that blue line on his goal. Akil Thomas, Phil for the guy. Like, what more can he do? He tried to defend it, and he just looks foolish. And he's not going to be alone by the end of the season. There's going to be lots of guys there. So I know you asked me about defense, but with Quinn, so much of his defensive game is spending time up ice. And it was another night where the underlyings are just so off the charts good that you just feel when he's out there, the Canucks aren't in danger. They're not in peril. And he took a first penalty of the season. And I know they would have loved to have had him out there for a couple extra minutes late in the game, protecting the lead. But, kind of nice to see him stand up for himself as well. There.
Completely. Exactly. If you're going to take a penalty, I would much rather that than a hooking penalty. Coincidental minors where you're sticking up for yourself, by all means, Quinn. Like that's a good standard to sort of set forth.
Pretty good trade, right? Like, Brant Clark's not at Quinn Hughes' level, but he means a lot to the LA Kings. He's got 12 points. And it was just funny the way that whole thing unfolded off the rush. And before you know it, glove punches are being fired both ways. So, not really sure. I didn't expect those two to be combatants in this hockey game. But again, I just think it speaks to it's a rivalry. There's certainly some feeling in the game. We know that from what happened in the first period, obviously. But yeah, I like a little bite and a little pushback from the captain on top of everything else that he does so well right now.
I was going to ask you, Jeff, you covered 3 MVP seasons with the Canucks, Hank, Danny, and Marcus, not to mention Roberto Luongo's 06-07 masterpiece where he single-handedly drags them to the division championship. Is this the best, or was last year the best individual season you've seen from a Vancouver Canucks player in 20-plus years of covering the team?
His impact on the game every shift out feels like something that I've not witnessed. Daniel and Henrik, which wasn't fair to them, but they were lumped as a package deal, although we remember that 30-game stretch when Daniel broke his foot and Henrik took off and was like, see, I can do this on my own. We're not the same guy. But they're always looked at as the twins, right? And so it is sort of hard to separate their bodies of work, and one relied on the other, and they had superpowers that nobody else in the National Hockey League had. When Ryan Kessler went on those runs where he would take over games, you think of the National Playoff Series in 2011, he left no doubt from shift to shift and game to game that he was the best player in that series, but that was a relatively short series. We're 12 games in. There's still 70 to go. Quinn's going to have the odd-off night, but there's going to be so many more incredible nights than there are anything that even approaches normal. So, just the underlying numbers every night. And now, whether you look at the road trip, and I tweeted out this morning, his impact on the road trip, 5-on-5, the Canucks outscored the Kings 5-0. The high dangers were 15-1. Like, I don't care if it's the Sharks and the Ducks. Like, this guy plays 25 to 30 minutes a night. He's out there all the time. The 3 California opponents generated 1 high danger chance against Quinn Hughes in 180 minutes of hockey. Well, I guess it's not all 180 because of the special teams, but still, the point is made. Like, he's at another level right now, and it's so much fun to watch. It must be impossible to play against, as Akil Thomas found out the hard way. And the setup for the DeBrusk goal, I mean, great vision there to get that pass through some traffic onto the stick of Jake DeBrusk. Quinn made some great plays and flung that one puck at the net in the second period through traffic at the post, and then basically went down that road again and ended up scoring what turned out to be the game winner. So his fingerprints are just all over almost every game the Vancouver Canucks are involved in right now.
It's a big win. The Kings are having a nice start to the season. They tested themselves. It was a bit of a bend, don't break defense there towards the end of the third, but it was, it's good training ground for what they have to do. Now they come home for 6 games. Jeff, if they just have a good homestand, like 4-2 homestand, they'd be at 11-4-3 on the season. It'd be a pretty spectacular start, one that I don't think anybody would have penciled in without Thatcher Demko.
Right, and I think they're going to be measured against last year's team, and they already have been, right? Like, remember, through 4 games, they had the same point total as last year. And then we all said, yeah, but last year's team then went 8-0-1. Well, what they're doing here, like the similarities aren't that far off. And if you remember, guys, late November last year, they had a stretch of 10 games where they alternated wins and losses, and we all thought, all right, the first 20 games were fun, but are they coming back down to earth here? And then they pulled out of that 10-game stretch, and I think they went like 18-2-4 or something. So, that's how you get to 50 wins and 109 points. And right now, with 2 regulation losses through a dozen games, they're back on the same sort of point trajectory that we saw from them last year. Quinn Hughes, after a bit of a sluggish start from him offensively, he's now on pace for 95 or 96 points. So he's on a pace that's going to outstrip his Norris Trophy performance, and he's doing so many other things well. And you're right, opportunity throughout this month of November. It's not just a 6-game homestand without really any kind of murderer's row coming in here. It's then they go back out on an Eastern road trip, and it starts in Ottawa. It goes to Boston, Pittsburgh, Buffalo. Like, find me the
juggernaut. No.
Yeah. And so that's the other thing. And this surprised me last night, guys, because 6 straight road wins for the Canucks. There have only been 3 instances in over half a century of hockey in this organization where they have won more consecutive road games. And then you look at they don't play on the road for 2 weeks now, but they have a chance to bump up against franchise history if they can take care of business. And we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I was just surprised. Well, six in a row on the road is great. But I was surprised that there are only 3 over the course of Canucks history that have been longer than the current win streak away from home.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure we're that far ahead of ourselves. One of those streaks was 2 years ago under Bruce, and the record setter was 2010-2011 when they were extraordinary, of course, and were using sleep science where the rest of the league wasn't. Garland, we asked yesterday, star player or role player? He goes out, he gets a goal, he dominates the analytics, and he plays a career-high 23 minutes, Jeff. A word or two on the Canucks mighty right winger.
Yeah, well, Rick Tocchet clearly can't get enough of this guy right now, and it's hard to argue, and so we just keep throwing him over the boards. And, down a forward early in the hockey game, I think everybody was going to see a little bit more ice time along the way, so I think that maybe played into ultimately how Garland got to a career high in ice time, but it's warranted. And the goal gets a little help from Darcy Kemper, but he certainly is the guy that touched the puck, so it's Garland's goal. The problem there was they called it an own goal on the National Hockey League game sheet. Like, JT deserved an assist. It was a great pass, but Quinn also flung it over to JT, so Quinn Hughes essentially robbed of a second assist there. Just keep that in mind when you think of everything else that he did well on the road trip. But no, Conor Garland just looks like a guy that is playing with as much confidence as he has ever had in the National Hockey League. He looks like a guy, and maybe it's taken him longer than he thought, that is truly coming to his own. Like, we saw long stretches of this last year, but again, I think he has found a way to elevate and just bring a consistency. Like, there are no bad shifts, it seems, for Conor Garland. And when you see him hop over the boards, you know that he's going to come up with a puck. He's going to win his board battles. He's going to make things happen in the offensive zone. And, I mean, he truly is. And Rick Tocchet's mentioned it a few times along the way here, but he is the driver on that line now. Like, it's Conor Garland's line, and Elias Pettersson is just playing on it, essentially, is the way things are working. Now, we can have a broader discussion about, is that really, the way you want it to shake down for a guy that's making close to $12 million, but I think it's undeniable. Anybody that's watched this team closely knows that it is Garland that's making things happen. And ultimately, we'll see if Elias Pettersson can read and react and find the right spots, and will the points eventually follow? We'll see. It hasn't really happened that way to this point, but Conor Garland.
What did you think? What did you think of him last night, Jeff Pettersson?
Pettersson?
Yep.
Again, defensively, I thought he was stout, and head to head against Anze Kopitar, who was leading the Kings in points, and I didn't think Kopitar did an awful lot. But Pettersson's only shot came shorthanded off the rush with JT Miller in the first period. That was his only shot on goal. And again, like, you're being paid to do all those defensive things, and then it's plus, and we're not getting a single plus. Forget the plus right now with Elias Pettersson. So again, the bar's been lowered so far in this market. I think that's important. Defensive plays and wins are, it contributed to the victory. But when you see what other players in his pay grade are doing around the National Hockey League, they are doing a ton here. And so, I just thought there were way more important, way more effective storylines to follow last night, but we know that he's the flashpoint in this market. So defensively, no, lots of good things there. But is that enough for what they're paying him? And I would say no, that the defense stuff should just come in his sleep, and then he's got to find a way to be contribute offensively as well.
Have we started to yawn at Kevin Lankinen performances? Is it just another day in Kevin Lankinen's universe?
That's the goalie that just provides victories at the back there. That's
right. Just provides victories, provides points every time.
That's all he does.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost do take him for granted. Kings were active on the power play. I think they had 9 shots on goal, and he had to make a couple of saves. There was a crazy scramble there in the second period when he was down and looking all around. And but his job is to keep the puck out of the net, and he did that. And look at the 2 goals that got by. I mean, Byfield, that's a terrific play from a good young player, and certainly not going to fault the goaltender there. And the Gavrikov one, shot from distance, but there was some traffic there, and maybe he wasn't expecting the shot to come as quickly as it did. But at the end of the night, I mean, this was 2 goaltenders that came into action last night. Him and Darcy Kemper, neither had lost in regulation. Well, only one guy can say that now, and that's the Canucks goalie. So, I'm just authoring an incredible story night after night after night. And the way the schedule goes here, there's just no reason to think that he's not going to get the starts. He will get the start Saturday. You'd think a couple of days between games after that he should be fresh and ready to go against Calgary. And we know what happened on opening night against the Flames. So I don't think there's any chance that Artie Silovs is getting another chance at the Calgary Flames. I'm going to be fascinated to see ultimately where this goes for Kevin Lankinen over the long haul. It's tied into Thatcher Demko and his return. It's on a 1-year contract right now, so he's not even eligible to sign an extension. I've had some people ask me, like, why don't they lock him up now? Per the terms of the CBA, that's just not something the Canucks can do at this stage. But it is crazy to think how late Kevin Lankinen remained on the open market this past summer, and there's just not a world in which that would happen again next offseason.
Nope. Lastly, first meeting with the Oilers tomorrow, Jeff. How much do you think the Canucks want this game a little bit of vengeance, and do you expect any bad blood?
Is this game 8? Are we calling this one? I hope not. I mean, look, you always want to win divisional games. They're ahead of the Oilers, and the best way to stay ahead of teams that are trying to track you down is to beat them in regulation time. Oilers are scuffling. They lost badly to New Jersey, got shut out at home, lost to Vegas, gave up a third period lead and lost there. At the outset of the week, I didn't think McDavid was going to be playing, so that's a pretty good card that they now have back in their lineup, and probably had to knock a little rust off against Vegas, but a few more days of practice, I'm sure 97 will be up and running. But guys, like, is it 2006? Is it 2000? Well, it's not 2006 because the Oilers went to the final then, but is it 2009? Is it 2013, 19? Like, after McDavid and Draisaitl, the next highest scoring forward on the Edmonton Oilers has 6 points. Like, what are we doing here? Every summer they load up on these guys that are supposed to come in and answer this question about depth. And it was Arvidsson, it was Skinner this year, it was other guys that were going to take steps forward. Draisaitl's got his points. McDavid obviously missed some time as a point-a-game guy. He'll get going. Then you get
they don't even have Hyman this year.
Yeah,
Hyman and the Nuge 5 points apiece. Like, both of them scuffling. And the other thing that amazes me, like, this stopped me in my tracks. They're the worst penalty-killing team in the NHL. Under 60%. This has taken me back a few years to the Canucks. They've already given up 15 power play goals. Think how locked in the Edmonton Oilers were on the penalty kill in the playoffs, particularly against the Canucks. Like, that was one of the storylines, was this penalty kill is airtight. Like, nobody can puncture it. Well, what a difference a few months make, because we'll see. And again, the Canucks power play has shown some signs of life here, but maybe opportunity is knocking for a big night for the power play at home against the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah, the rivalry is on. Facility Pod Colson coming back to town here. We'll see where things go. But Saturday night, Oilers should have that big game feel, I would imagine.
It will. You'll be there covering it. Jeff, fantastic stuff. Have a great weekend. We'll be listening to RinkWide Vancouver. We'll catch up with you next week.
All right, guys. You have a great weekend as well.